He sold his dog, not because he wanted to, because he had no choice. $25 to a stranger outside a liquor store in New York City, his best friend. The only thing in his life that loved him back without conditions. $25 so he could eat. His name was Butkus. 3 weeks later, Sylvester Stallone sat across a table from studio executives who slid a number toward him. $350,000. He said no. They came back. The number went up. He said no again. They raised it further. He said no again. Most people would have taken the first offer. Most people would have taken any offer. This man had sold his dog for $25 3 weeks earlier, and he still said no. That is not a rags to riches story. That is something rarer. That is a man who understood the difference between price and value, and refused to confuse the two even when he was starving. This is the story of Sylvester Stallone. Let's not sanitize this. Sylvester Enzio Stallone was born on July 6, 1946, in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood of Manhattan. The delivery went wrong. Forceps were used. A nerve was severed. The result was permanent, partial paralysis of the lower left side of his face. Slurred speech, a drooping lip, the world sneered back. His parents' marriage was chaos. His mother left. His father was largely absent. Stallone was bounced between relatives, foster arrangements, and institutions. He attended 12 schools in 11 years. He was expelled. He was dismissed. He was, in the language of every report card and teacher's note, a problem. He briefly attended the University of Miami on a partial scholarship, studying drama. He dropped out. He moved to New York. He was evicted. He slept in the Port Authority bus terminal for 3 weeks. He took any acting work he could find. He appeared in a softcore film called Party at Kitty and Studs for $200 because the alternative was not eating. He auditioned constantly and was rejected constantly, often told his face was wrong, his voice was wrong, his whole presence was wrong for film. And then there was the dog. Butkus was a bull mastiff. Stallone has said in interviews that Butkus was his closest companion during those years. The one consistent relationship in a life made of instability. When things got bad enough that he could not afford to feed them both, he stood outside a liquor store and offered Butkus to strangers for $50. Nobody took that price. A man offered $25. Stallone took it. He walked home alone. March 1975. Muhammad Ali versus Chuck Wepner. Madison Square Garden. Wepner was nobody. A club fighter from Bayonne, New Jersey. A journeyman heavyweight who had no business sharing a ring with the greatest boxer alive. He got knocked down. He got back up. He bled through 15 rounds. He never stopped coming forward. Ali knocked him down for good with 49 seconds left in the 15th round. Stallone watched the entire fight from his seat, and something cracked open in him. He went home. He sat down. He started writing. 3.5 days later, he had a screenplay. He called it Rocky. The script landed with producers Robert Chartoff and Irwin Winkler. They loved it immediately. And then came the conversation that would define everything. Stallone wanted to play Rocky. The studio said no. Politely at first, then firmly. They wanted a star. A real star. They offered him $25,000 for the script. He said no. The offer went to $100,000, then $175,000, then $265,000, then $350,000. Each time, the condition was the same. Sell us the script, someone else plays Rocky. Each time, his answer was the same. No. The final deal, $35,000 for the script, a fraction of what they had offered, and Stallone would star. Before he did anything else, he went back to that liquor store. He eventually paid $3,000, plus a small role in the film, to get his dog back. Rocky was released on November 21, 1976. It cost $1.1 million to make. It grossed $225 million worldwide. It won 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Sylvester Stallone became only the 3rd person in Oscar history to be nominated for both Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay in the same year. The man they told had the wrong face, the wrong voice, the wrong everything. Here is what the newspapers wrote about in 1977. The rags to riches story. The overnight success. The underdog who made good. Here is what they missed. The business architecture underneath it. Stallone did not take the big upfront fee on Rocky. He took a smaller number and negotiated back-end profit participation, a percentage of what the film actually earned after costs. This is the difference between being paid for your labor and being paid for your ownership. On a film that cost $1 million to make, that decision was worth 10 times the largest upfront offer he had ever refused. He didn't stop there. He understood, earlier than almost any actor of his generation, that the franchise was the enterprise. Rocky wasn't a movie. Rocky was intellectual property, a character, a world, a brand that could be reproduced, extended, licensed, and sold in forms that hadn't been invented yet. He structured his deals to retain as much creative control as possible. The 1980s made him the biggest action star on Earth. Rocky, Rambo. Two franchises running in parallel. By the early 2000s, the industry consensus was clear. He was finished. He was 60 years old. Stallone wrote another screenplay. Rocky Balboa was released in 2006. He wrote it, directed it, and starred in it. The film made $156 million. This is not nostalgia. This is ownership. He controlled the IP. When he decided the story wasn't finished, no one could tell him it was, because it was his. A man with more than one way to create, more than one way to generate value, more than one thing they can never take from him. So, what does any of this actually teach? The Stallone story is not about talent, though he has it. It's not about luck, though he caught some. It is about something more precise, more transferable, and more difficult. It is about knowing which part of the deal you will never trade away. Every negotiation has terms. Some of those terms are flexible: price, timeline, credit, percentage. And some of those terms are not. Stallone was offered $350,000 when he had nothing. The fear must have been deafening. Every rational voice in the room, including probably the one in his own head, said, "Take the money." The irrational voice said, "They won't let you be Rocky, so the money means nothing, because without being Rocky, you are still nothing, just a nothing with a little money." He listened to the irrational voice. The business concept here is asymmetric risk. He gave up a certain large gain, the $350,000, for an uncertain but potentially enormous one. The downside of refusing was staying poor, which he already was. The upside of refusing and being right was everything. That is not recklessness. That is clear-eyed calculation from someone who understood his own position precisely. And then there is the dog. Come back to the dog. He sold Butkus for $25. He bought him back for $3,000. That gap, $25 to $3,000, is the physical, tangible cost of conviction before it pays. Most people cannot survive that gap. They take the deal. They compromise the non-negotiable. Stallone didn't. And the cost of that was real. He was hungry. He was alone. He sold the thing he loved most in the world for $25. That is what conviction actually costs before it pays. The world will tell you what you're worth constantly. The world has a number for you. And that number is almost always lower than the true one because the world is pricing you on what it can see, not on what you know about what you're capable of. Stallone knew the world's number was wrong. He held out for his own. He once said the world wasn't going to give him anything, so he stopped asking. He wrote his own script, literally. A man who was born with a paralyzed face and told his whole life that something was wrong with him. Wrong face, wrong voice, wrong type, wrong everything. Sat down one night after watching a nobody go 15 rounds with the greatest fighter alive. And he wrote the story of a man who refuses to be counted out. Then he refused to sell it to anyone who wouldn't let him live it. The empire is what you build when you refuse to let anyone else define the terms of your own story. The moment you compromise the thing that makes you irreplaceable, you become replaceable. He never forgot that. And somewhere, in everything he built, every frame of Rocky, every painting he ever finished, every franchise he constructed from nothing, you can still see the kid who walked home from a liquor store without his dog, absolutely certain that one day he would be back to get him. He was right.